Hello, everyone. My name is Nenna Okore. I'm the Director for Learning and Research at VES Incorporated, and I'm so glad to be here. I'm so sorry that I couldn't do a live session with you because we're currently planning our EdVest Catalyst program, which comes up next Saturday on the 2nd and on the 3rd, Friday and Saturday of June 2023, and I hope you've registered and you'll be a part of this amazing program. Currently, we are trying to do some test runs and other things that would make the program quite interesting and very engaging for all of you who will be attending that program. So yes, I feel so honored being invited to speak on a topic that I'm very passionate about, which is technology in education, especially in the 21st century. What are the simple tools that you can use to enhance teaching and learning in your classroom in the 21st century? I will be sharing my screen now, and then we'll dive into the topic. And if you have questions to ask, you can always put it in the chat box. I will respond to the questions as they come in. But I would like you to listen attentively, bring out your jotters and notepads and take note of some things I'll be sharing with you. I want to first of all reiterate that I do not know everything. I'm an educator of so many years. Yes, I've also been a school administrator, and I'm currently the Director of Learning and Research. However, I do not know everything. So I'd like this session to be quite engaging. So if you know that there's anything you need to add, comment on, or ask questions about, do feel free to type in the chat box, and then would respond to them appropriately, and also share your own ideas, your own comments, your own experiences in the classroom in trying to utilize 21st century tools. So we will go quickly into the slides that I have prepared for this session. Yes, welcome, 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 welcome. This is the session that we've been waiting for. And in this session, we'll be looking at 21st century teaching methodology using the simplest form of technology. You know, when people hear technology, they think a school has to spend so much money buying a lot of computers, buying internet and so many other things, and then paying for a very expensive tech tool, But we've seen and we've discovered that over the years, tools like EdVest Basic is quite cheap and inexpensive, and if it is well utilized, you'll be able to achieve a fully digitized school with minimal technology. So we'll go deeply into why there is a lot of talk surrounding educational technology in our current world. Why are people so interested in educational technology in our current world? Before we talk about that, I'd like us to look at what learning outcomes are. Okay, why are we even embracing technology? The major reason is to enhance learning outcomes. So what are these learning outcomes? Declarative knowledge is one. We all know this is basically what we do in school. We just help the children to gain knowledge and facts, right? But learning outcome goes beyond declarative knowledge. It also centers around skills, acquiring new techniques and abilities to help the students become better at what they do. And then it also goes beyond knowledge and skills. It also has to do with reactions, liking or disliking a training program. For example, how do students react after you've taught them? Do they feel inspired? Do they feel self-motivated? Okay, and that leads us to self-efficacy, believing that they're able to achieve any task that they are determined to do. Now, I want you to do a short activity. I want you to think and reflect what a perfect student graduating from your current class should be able to represent, demonstrate, or produce. This is third term, and a lot of them will be leaving your class at the end of this term. What is that one thing you would like them to become or be able to demonstrate or produce by the end of that class? Okay, so you can type that in the chat box as we move along, so that this is supposed to be a reflective practice for you to reflect more and on your practice as an educator and find ways to make your practice better. Now, while reflecting on that, I want you to also think, what you've just reflected on, does it relate with the objectives of the lessons that you have been teaching them from first term, second term, and now third term? Does it relate with the objectives at all? Yes. Now, we have another reflective activity I want us to focus on. Please type in the chat box as we go on. I want you to think and mention 5 top activities 21st century students enjoy doing. What are the 5 things that they enjoy doing? For me, I know that a lot of children enjoy hands-on activities. They want to build, they want to mold, right? And then we have digitized children who are in the digital age, who want to play games and have fun, and they learn by having fun. They don't love tedious learning. They don't want learning that is so tedious for them. However, we still need to teach them resilience, right? They still need to learn resilience. So some form of tedious work will come at one point or the other in their lives. However, we still need to make learning as fun as possible for the kind of learners that we have in the 21st century. I want you to look at this picture. As you can see, the world is facing great challenges. By the time you open up your Twitter account or open up several accounts, your social media handles, you would see a lot of changes going on in the world, a lot of changes, from climate change to pollution, to war, to technological advancements in healthcare, in education, science and technology. So many things happening in the world every day. Somebody is bringing out one new innovation or the other, and some of these innovations solve problems and also create more problems in the world. So because the world is facing lots of challenges, one of the solutions to the world's challenge is technology, right? And technology has fundamentally shifted the way learning happens in education. All right, I'm sure most of us can remember our style of learning, the traditional style of learning that leaves students as mere consumers of information, okay, with no scope for student interaction or creativity, right? But now technology-based learning is slowly and quickly, depending on how you use it, enhancing student creativity by offering a more holistic learning approach, all right? So it helps them to do everything from uploading recorded classes online to referring to digital copies of the topics discussed in class. So we're entering into a phase of learning where students are becoming the masters and the teachers are just the guides or the tour guides. Let me put it that way. Like you're leading a group of tourists around a particular location to show them, different parts of the location as a tour guide, but the tourists are the ones, consuming the information in their own way. Now, what should a digitized school typically look like? What should a digitized school look like? The first thing is school administration. We all know about enrollment, tracking the number of enrollments, attendance, and timetable. So a digitized school should use tools that can help automate processes like this, okay? A digitized school shouldn't still be having paper where you're writing names of students or marking register on paper and then even pasting papers all around, timetable all around, okay? It should be automated in such a way that you should be able to quickly get notifications when you have a class. You should get notifications when there's a new student joining, and several other things that should be automated. And that is what EdVest does. Okay, EdVest as a tool has helped a lot of schools to be able to digitize school administration as much as possible. Also, learning and lesson delivery. Learning and lesson delivery. How is your school teaching currently? Do you still write lesson plan on paper, on in books? Then what happens when that book goes missing or the teacher leaves the school? Are you able to keep a form of like a folder where you keep all your lesson plans? so that when new teachers join your school, they are able to, just go there and continue from wherever the last teacher stopped. Okay, are you able to, put it in an archive? Automate your lesson planning in such a way that as each lesson plan is churned out, it's automatically going to an archive where a teacher can always come back there and retweak it or re-edit it and use, for the students. Or your teachers have to keep writing and recopying already made lesson notes into new books. You need to think about that as well. Now, another thing is data tracking. How do you track your results? Have you been able to use formative assessments? Maybe I know that a lot of schools, what we do for midterm test or CAT, that's continuous assessment test, is to just record it and then send it to parents as midterm reports. But do we really track what is going on in terms of all the assessments we give the students? Do we track results? Do we look at the trend? Okay, which subject is actually going down? Which subjects are students struggling in? How can we make them better in this subject? And that, so that you can make certain decisions. I'll give you a typical example. When I was a principal of a particular secondary school, I had an issue with the English language. And how did I get data for that? I noticed and discovered that the students were not doing so well. Okay, so we plotted everything in graphs and then used automated Excel sheets to get that done. And then luckily for us, when we started using a digital tool, it also just did it for us. That's what EdVest does. EdVest would help you automate your data analysis tools. And then once whatever score you type in, you see it in graphs and you see it in automated data, right? Analyzed data. So I saw it that English was dropping from grade 7, that's JSS1, down to JSS3. Okay, so I had to think, and myself and my team, we came together and we came up with strategies to help the English language the next term. So what did we do? We focused so much on morning drill. We did a lot of vocabulary building, helping students in creative writing. I had to bring in someone to train the English teachers on how to teach creative writing and how to make students better. So now that data that I was tracking was not only focused on which child is not doing well or which teacher is not doing well, because it shouldn't be a witch hunt process, right? But it's also a feedback to me on what professional development the teachers might be needing at that point in time. So we first of all did a whole school program where the teachers had to learn like spoken English, how to communicate, and then we streamlined the training to the English department where they had to learn and relearn how to teach creative writing, how to assess creative writing, how to share their rubrics with the students on the expectations in writing and comprehension skills as well. And that did a lot of wonders. And then we also organized the spelling bee competition that's term to also enhance and build the vocabulary of the students. And the next term, we had way better results than what we had. We had a lot of children coming out with A stars in English language, and they became better. That same term, some of our students went out for external competitions, external spelling bee competitions, and it was amazing. Now, something funny happened at the end of the term. We succeeded in English language, right? However, we noticed another thing, that math had dropped. Funny, right? So what we did was to go back to the drawing board. Okay, we've gotten English right. How can we balance this so that we don't focus on math and then English goes down again? So we started doing simultaneous drills, like we'll do English drill today, tomorrow we'll do math drill, and then we started registering some students who had flair for mathematics in competitions for them to go and challenge themselves, and that also worked wonders. So I don't think data should be joked with. As a school administrator, as a school manager, even as a teacher in your classroom, you should use data to track every result that comes up. You should use data, because if you don't use data, you would always make mistakes and you would get stuck at the point and you don't know where the problem might be coming from. So data is key. please tell yourself data is key. And most times, the reason why a lot of people run away from data is because it takes a lot of time to compute, to analyze, But with technology, you can do all these things and it can be automated. And that's what EdFest also does. We automate data for you. And then you see it in real time and you're able to make decisions as a teacher or as a school owner, as an administrator at that point. Now, I want us to talk about another thing, finance. Finance is also another key area of management or administration that schools look out for. So a digitized school should also focus on finance. How do you build your finance? How do you improve your school fees management, budgeting, and inventory? Communication is also another thing, record keeping, lesson plan, reports, and feedback. How do you, as a supervisor, give feedback to your students and to your teachers in terms of lesson planning and reports? So, just to let you know that everything that I've mentioned here is in one package, fully built in one package, courtesy of EdVest Incorporated. So if you as a school would like to be a part of this, please feel free to reach out to us, and then we'll be there live and direct to give you a virtual demo or a physical demonstration of how EdVest can help your school become a digitized school. Now, I hear a lot of questions when I talk about this, when I discuss with teachers and with school owners and administrators, that they don't have resources, we don't have computers, we don't have internet, we don't have the internet, we don't have different things that can help our schools to adopt technology in order to automate processes and allow our teachers to focus on the nitty-gritty of schoolwork, okay? And what I always say is that should we focus on the challenges of lack of resources or focus on the adoption of simple tools to enhance teaching and learning in our world? And this brings me to this young man. He's a friend of mine as well. I always feel inspired talking about him. This is a man who works in a public school in Abuja, Karu, to be precise. And he came up with a lot of ideas on how to use simple tools of technology to teach his students. He came into the limelight when he won the Multina Teacher of the Year, and then in 2020, he won the Global Teachers Prize for what he's been doing. His name is Olasupomi Okwefa. And one of the things that struck me about he's an English teacher, by the way. One of the things that struck me about what he does is that he uses simple things that people love, like TikTok, to teach English, to teach vocabulary. He records himself on his phone, just his phone, that same phone that you're using to do WhatsApp status, you're using to chat with people every day. We have a lot of content that we can dish out to our children every day using a tool as simple as WhatsApp, using a tool as simple as TikTok. You and I know that many of our students, even those in public school, have smartphones. They might not be using it every day, but maybe weekends, but at least if you start creating content that can help the students become better, with the use of smartphones, and they're learning new ideas, they're learning new concepts that they can use in their classrooms and become better students and improve their learning outcome. Why not? Why not? And the beauty is that a lot of tools now are on Play Store. EdFest, for example, can be downloaded on Play Store. So you don't necessarily need to have a big laptop in your school or a lab or an ICT lab where your teachers have to go and work. Just with their phones, they can type their lesson plans and send. They can send videos to students to watch. They can record them. So they can even, fix a virtual class for their students on real time. Let's say a student is having issues with understanding a concept. Instead of keeping them back in school till 6 o'clock, you could say, okay, go home and meet me at 7 p.m. All of us will just have a short discussion about this topic. And then you send a virtual class to them, a virtual link to them to join your class on EdVest. And it's in a controlled environment, okay? So they're not going out to go and look for information elsewhere where they might start getting distracted with negative vices that do not suit the students. So, and I always tell teachers as well that, you don't need to wait for your school to give you all these resources. On your own, it should be a clarion call for us educators to go out of our comfort zone and see how we can make learning easy for our students and for ourselves, because in the long run, the more you are exposed to a lot of tech tools in education, the better your chances of reducing your stress in terms of lesson preparation, in terms of teaching and learning. Okay, I remember when I was doing a lot of online classes with students, I didn't have to sit down to prepare a lot of classes because I had an archive of resources from the internet and resources that I'd created myself over the years. Okay, so I'll just pull it out and then I use it to teach and the students learn at the same time. So my focus was more on the delivery and guiding the students to learn the subject matter. So yes, the challenges shouldn't be an excuse. You should be able to, look beyond the challenges and look at how it can make you a better teacher and also make your students better students as well. I'd like to talk about the evolution of education across centuries. In ancient Greece, we had personalized learning, but it was not very accessible, okay? Children from wealthy homes, wealthy democrats, in Greece then, could have philosophers and tutors, the like of Aristotle taught Socrates and the rest of them, or Socrates taught Aristotle. And then it was personalized learning because they were soaking up a lot of knowledge from one individual, but it was not very accessible because it was only reserved for the elites, right? Now, in the Middle Ages, 19th century, modern education was born. We now had more accessible education, highly standardized, but less personalized. So you had a classroom like what we have currently in some public schools, where you have a classroom filled up with 100 students and one teacher is teaching. Nobody's after whether you're learning or you're not learning, just learn. And then there's a standardized test at the end of the year, okay, or end of the term, but it was less personalized. I think we still have that in a lot of places in Africa and Nigeria, okay? Then 21st century, this is 21st century, everybody has started rethinking how the classroom should be. There should be immersive learning environments and immersive learning environments, right? In the past, if we had this type of program, I would have to travel all the way to wherever the program is being held to attend, right? But right now I can sit in the comfort of my home and I'm dishing out this information to you for you to learn. So that's an immersive learning environment. However, it is still not accessible or affordable. So the whole idea is, how do we make it accessible? How do we make it affordable? How can we reach out to the interior villages, interior places, and still make those children learn, okay? And that is the role of technology. That's the role of technology. The role of technology is to create flexible learning opportunities, okay? So this video I'm creating right now can be even sent to a teacher in Makurdi, or a teacher in Zamfara, or a teacher in a village in Anambra or in Enugu, and they will get to learn and benefit from this training. So that is flexible learning opportunity without constraint of time and space. It also has to be interactive, okay? Learning has to be interactive. So while you're learning right now, you're interacting with me in a way because you're typing in the chat box the questions you have, you're jotting down, and then I'll get the feedback at the same time, in real time, okay? And then it has to improve overall learning experience. And then personalized education. It should be personal, based on the needs of the learner. It should also be a collaborative approach, and there should be measurement of learning through analytics. This is what I call data tracking. You should be able to track how well your learners are learning, because data is key. Now, these are the 5 tips on how to improve learning outcomes using education, using technology in education. You need to think about how you can reconstruct your teaching methods. There are some modern teaching methods that we'll be looking at briefly in this session, and I hope you will benefit from that. Then you need to teach outside the classroom. What that means is that it doesn't mean you should go out to the streets and teach, not necessarily, but what it means is that using technology, your teaching can be out of the 4 walls of the classroom. You can decide to adopt a tool like PL by Edverse, where we create a platform, where we have created a platform for tutors to come online, create content, and then teach virtually at the same time. And then you also need to start assessing your students' learning. What we are used to in this part of our world is waiting till exam to assess how well the children are learning. But formative assessment should be our focus, right? We should assess how children are learning from the moment we're teaching them a particular concept. We should assess how children are learning from the moment they are practicing that concept, okay? And we should also assess how they are learning at the end of the term and at subsequent intervals, okay? And of course, say yes to technology. You can't do all these things I'm talking about without the input of technology. It is time consuming and it's a lot of work, right? But technology has come to make life easy and to make work easy. So you need to say yes to technology and reverse your learning model. What do I mean by reversing your learning model? What that basically means is that you need to remove yourself as the owner of the classroom and become a student. Yes. Basically, what that means is that your students will become the owners of their learning. They will take charge of their learning while you are the guide, okay? You become a facilitator rather than a traditional teacher standing in front of the classroom and enforcing learning. So that is reversing the learning model. Now, let us look at how we can reconstruct teaching methods. How can you reconstruct your teaching methods? There are several ways to do this. I'm sure many of us have heard about flipped learning, okay? And then there's microlearning. I'm sure we've also heard about blended learning. There's mastery learning, there's project-based learning, and differentiating lesson delivery. I might not be able to cover everything here because of time, but I just hope that we'll pick one or two things from what I discuss here as we go on. Now, let's look at a flipped classroom. Imagine this scenario. Mrs. Anya wants to teach the summary of Romeo and Juliet in her literature class. And then she stumbles upon a movie online about Romeo and Juliet. She downloads the child-appropriate version and shares it with her class on their LMS platform like Edverse for them to watch over the weekend. Then in her next class, the students are allowed to discuss the movie and write a detailed summary of the story. Ms. Anyanwu has just flipped her classroom. She used technology to flip her classroom. Now, I want you to think, some of you are already doing this in one way or the other, right? But I want you to think, either you share your experience with us or you just write what you think. How can you flip your own classroom? Give an instance using any topic of your choice of how you can apply flipped learning. So the organizers can pause this video for us to have this short discussion on how you can apply flipped learning in your classroom. So there are 7 ways that I've come up with on how to flip a class. Number 1, you need to believe in flipped classroom, because if you don't believe in it, it won't reflect in your planning, it won't reflect in your lesson delivery. Then you need to curate resources that can help you flip your classroom. Now, these resources can be in form of videos, can be audio. I'm actually flipping this classroom now because I had to record this conversation and then I'm sending it across for you to listen to. So that's an example of a flipped classroom. So you need to ask yourself, what kind of tools can I use to flip my classroom? Okay. Then you also need to consider classroom management, because for you to flip your class, you need to set some rules and some guidelines on how your students should be able to use the resources that you are currently using to flip your classroom. For example, you could set timelines. For example, if you give them a video to watch, they can't watch the video after a certain time. The video is no longer accessible after that time. But if you want them to read a file, you can make the file not to be accessible after a time. But you want them to play an online quiz. The online quiz also can have a scheduled time that it would expire. So those are examples of classroom management techniques that you could use to flip your class. Then you need to get a lot of training on technology. Please and please, I'm begging you all. This is the 21st century. If you do not have technological training, or you are not tech savvy in this 21st century, you're missing a lot. You're missing out a lot. Something as simple as the use of the WhatsApp can be your own tech training. Okay, something as simple as the use of TikTok or Flipgrid. There's so many tools you can use, even Edverse. Edverse basic tools are PL by Edverse, PQ by Edverse, so many tools. If you need help with that, please reach out to us and we'll help you, guide you on the right tech training that you need to become a better teacher. Because you cannot flip a classroom if you cannot use the technology, okay? Now, the fifth thing is for you to assign the content for homework when you have all these skills and you've set your rubrics, and then the students can now work the problems in the class. So your class, imagine a flipped classroom. Like I just gave an example about Romeo and Juliet. Your class will now be more of a discussion-based class than just you standing in front and dishing out all the information. Your class will be more of a discussion-based class because the students have gotten a preconceived knowledge that you have sent to them, okay? So they are coming in to do what I call knowledge harvest in the course of teaching. So the students come into the class and they are just dishing out their knowledge and sharing ideas, bouncing ideas back and forth amongst one another, and then they are learning more. It becomes an actively engaged class where you have active learners and not passive learners, okay? And then, of course, by doing this, you have to start thinking of how you can raise independent learning in your classroom. So we're done with flipped classroom. Let's look at this curve. I'd like the organizers to pause this video at this point so that the audience can, or the teachers rather, can talk about this curve. What does this curve tell you about how children learn? Please type in the chat box. What does this curve tell you about how children learn? So, if this curve tells you about how children learn, I'm sure some of you have written down that children forget, okay? So immediately, it's 100% retention. Then after 31 days, the retention rate drops to 21%. That is why sometimes you would test a child after a year of learning a concept and the child has forgotten. You're like, you just learned this in primary 3 or just learned this in primary 2. Why have you forgotten? The truth of the matter is that it's psychology. It's normal, okay? Even how many of us can remember what we learned in secondary school and in university? Many of us can remember, okay? And this is what we call the Ebbinger's forgetting curve, okay? So what can we do to support retention of learning using technology? The answer is microlearning, okay? You digitize learning in short, bit-sized and well-planned units that students consume via digital media. So they can always go back and consume the short, bit-sized, well-planned units, okay? As a teacher, you have to break down learning into short, manageable pieces of information. So when you're creating content for learning, don't make it too long, don't make it too lengthy, okay? You break it down into bit-sized units for students to be able to consume, and then they do activities afterwards. Now, how does microlearning benefit your classroom? It helps your classroom to maintain attention span. Students own their own learning pace, and it saves time and energy. Remember, each of the units should be tied to the learning objective of the lesson. Make it interactive and don't overwhelm your students. Of course, you can't use microlearning when you're learning a musical instrument, or a project management or instructional design or a software tool, because those are practical-based learning. So you need to, enhance a lot of practice at that point, okay? Some people would argue that, okay, musical instruments, you can still break it down. Today we're going to learn the keys, tomorrow we're going to learn this, fine. But when you now go into the nitty-gritty of the practice and routine, you may not be able to break it down because you might have a task at hand that might take the students a lot of time than usual. But when it comes to abstract learning, it's very important for you to use the method of micro-learning. So we've learned two models. We've learned flipped classroom and we have also learned micro-learning. Now let's go to blended learning, my favorite of all, because this is a blend of the traditional method and the modern method of teaching. What is blended learning? It's also called hybrid learning model. And I'm sure many of us have heard about blended learning. Many of us might already be doing blended learning. Flipped classroom is a typical example of blended learning because you are adapting technology tools and you are mixing it with face-to-face method of teaching. Okay, so blended learning is all about face-to-face learning, personalization, adaptive learning tools, social distancing, health and safety, flexible schedules, okay? Because the world we live in right now is so unpredictable. So you have to ensure that even when something happens in society, it doesn't stop learners from gaining knowledge, okay? So remote learning tools are also important because it's part of blended learning. Now, what are the benefits of a blended classroom? It addresses your students' need better and quicker. There's a lot of differentiation embedded in blended learning. And then data and knowledge is given for instructional decision making at that point. Now, let us look at this short survey that was done, like a research that was done using traditional teaching and LabStar. LabStar is a laboratory simulation, just like we have FETS. EDVES has integrated with FETS, a simulation company from University of Colorado, and it's been amazing. Now, this is a scientific study that was done to look at how, in 2014, to look at how the use of simulation and traditional teaching have impacted students' learning. Now, when traditional teaching was only used, students' learning was at 0.85. And then when LabStar was only used, students' learning increased to about 1.4. Now, when LabStar as a simulation tool, together with traditional teaching, was jointly used, students' learning shot up to 1.70. So this shows that a blend of traditional method of teaching and the modern methods of teaching, infusing technology in traditional method of teaching has a way of improving learning outcomes beyond our imagination. Now, there are different forms of blended learning. I think I've spoken a lot about flipped classroom. We also have the station rotation model, which you can, make more research about at this point. Okay, so this is an example of a rotation model where you have the teacher-led station, offline stations, online station. I'll give you an example. A practical example is when you want to teach, maybe you want to teach the concept of soil, okay, in science. And then you put the children in groups. Group work is also very important in blended learning. I forgot to mention that. So you put the students in groups rather, and then you call those groups labs or lab units, okay? So in each group, they are doing different activities, okay? So let's say for the first 5 minutes, group A is watching a video, that's technology. Group B is reading a material or a textbook about different types of soil, okay? That's the traditional method. Group C is listening to the teacher. The teacher is talking to them in low tone about different types of soil. Then group 4, for example, group D rather, is doing a kind of sample, a sample analysis of different types of soil. So that table might have the various types of soil, specimens of different types of soil, and they're looking at the properties of each of them by hands-on engagements, by looking at the properties, touching them, feeling them, doing some little experiments that the teacher has stated for them to do. Okay, then the next group is playing a game. When they are done in 10 minutes, a timer goes off, and then the timer just goes off, and then they switch. So the people in group A will move to group B, people in group B will move to group C, people in group C will move to group D, and then people in group D will move to group A, so on and on and on like that. Now, by the time you are done, that is why we call it rotation. After another 10 minutes or 5 minutes, the timer goes off again, and then they move round again. That is an example of a rotation model. Now, do you know that by the time you are done doing the rotation model, the children have been able to, maximize all the learning activities in that class. Unlike when you want to do all those activities, I just mentioned 5 different activities now. Imagine if you want to do all those activities in your class at once, one after the other, for all the students to be a part of. Do you know that you would spend more than 1 hour in that class and you will not achieve everything, and all the students will not do that activity? Maybe they might do 1 or 2, but they will not be able to finish the 5 activities. But with the rotation model, you are ensuring that within a space of 40 minutes class, all your students will have gone around the different learning processes or the different learning tools that you want to use to drive home the conversation of types of soil in that class. So can you see why blended learning is quite interesting? It just needs you to plan and make a lot of planning, do a lot of planning when you're writing your lesson plan, so that all the students can, be a part of the activities that you're doing at that moment. Okay. Now, for a virtual class, how do you do rotation model? Still the same thing. Put them in breakouts, in groups, give them their tasks to do. After 10 minutes, they change task again. Do you understand? And at the end of the day, you see that they're all doing the activities that you want them to do, but you just need to do a lot of planning at this point. Okay, so I don't know if you have questions about flipped classroom or rotation model and how you want it to work in your class, or if you feel that there are more ideas you have about it, you can drop in the chat box. Or if you feel that, okay, there are some things that you think might not be easy for you to do as a teacher, drop your feedback and your comments and your questions and your concerns in the chat box so that we can discuss it as we go on. So at this point, the organizers can also pause the video and let me know if I need to come in to answer any question at this point. Yeah. Okay, so let's move into mastery learning. Mastery learning focuses on mastering a topic before you move on to a more advanced one. It sounds logical, right? But it's not what we are doing in schools today, right? Our curriculum is so jam-packed that we don't wait for students to master a concept before we move them to the next concept. Fine, we know that students learn at different pace, okay? But at least 90% of your students should have gained mastery of a particular concept before you move into another concept. So how do we, but in reality, it's what is expected, right? But in reality, it's not always easy because you are not working for yourself. Most of us as teachers are employees. So if your employer says you must teach 10 topics within 10 weeks, and even if the students are not mastering it, you don't have any choice. You have to finish up your scheme. However, how can we create mastery learning? How can we achieve mastery learning with the short time and the jam-packed curriculum that we have? The answer is also technology, okay? The answer is technology. So how do we get this? We need to think of, doing a lot of video recordings, doing a lot of audio recordings, sending home extra work to the students, giving them maybe virtual classes. I've given you an example of maybe you've noticed that this student is struggling with this. You could say, oh, can I have a short call with you on Sunday, on Saturday, or can we talk this evening? You have to be as flexible as possible, because when the children are learning and doing well and coming up with very good results, it's your glory. Yes, the students are happy, their parents are happy, but it is your glory as a teacher, right? So you can use technology instead of staying back in school, racking your head, bringing the students to school on Saturday, and then you're stressed out. In the comfort of your home, you can have a virtual class where you are teaching them and helping them to gain mastery of that concept while you are still following the scheme in the class, okay? Now, what are the benefits of mastery learning? Students can master the concept while building a growth mindset, okay? And then classroom changes too. They don't have to focus only on your lecture. They can interact with each other. You can even create a Zoom meet and greet with your students over the weekend. I remember when I was taking a particular sociology class for A-levels, and I discovered that they were really struggling with the concept of functionalist theory. So what I did was I called it a Zoom party, okay, functionalist Zoom party. And in that party, we did a lot of activities around the functionalist theory. We played some games. We talked about different theorists, you know, and what was so special about them that they had to talk about functionalist theory. And do you know that by the end of that class, okay, many of the students got a full grasp of what the functionalist theory is, and they started using the theory to analyze a lot of sociological problems that they had to analyze in their exams, in their A-levels. So you could be very flexible as a teacher as to how you want the students to learn. You know, learning does not have to be a mundane thing where you're just following textbook knowledge or following a particular scheme. Okay, you can come up with ideas about how you want them to learn a particular concept, because your classroom has to be flexible. Okay, you can have group discussions, you can have reflective activities to gain mastery of concepts being taught. Okay. Now, the final one is project-based learning. I'll just talk briefly about project-based learning. Project-based learning, as the name implies, is applying knowledge to real-life issues, okay? So you could create projects around certain topics that you take. The project can be virtual-based, the project can be research-based, the project can even be something as simple as them doing a video discussing what they've learned, okay? So always ask yourself, how can I apply this learning, this topic, to a real life situation? How can I make my students apply to a real life situation? I'll give you a typical example. When I taught profit and loss in grade 4 many years ago, I didn't even know much about flipped learning and blended learning then. So it was a profit and loss class in mathematics. What did I do? I gave them a weekend project to ask mommy and daddy to give them some money. They go to the shop and then they buy things on their own. That is a project. And when they are done, they should do a table. They should draw a table. I was also teaching them accounting at that point, you know, as young as they were, but they did not know. They should draw a table. I gave them a template. Put in your expenses and put in your capital. What did you have at the beginning of the shopping? What did you spend? So that's like your shopping needs. And then they put in the amounts that they spent, calculate the total, and then write down your balance. What balance did you get at the end of the day, and submit it on Monday. And it was amazing. You know, I also put them up in, I also told them that they should post their pictures or videos shopping on the WhatsApp group that I created. Okay. And it was so amazing. The students came back with a lot of stories, how they felt cheated. They didn't know that this was so expensive, you know, and so many things. It was very interesting. It was a project, right? Now, there's no way that child will ever forget profit and loss. Another thing that happened in my children's school 2 weeks ago was them doing a big sale. They did not just a big sale, they did a trade fair. Okay, trying to teach them profit and loss. They did a trade fair, grade 4 students. And what did they do? They came with different things from home to sell. And after selling, they calculated their profits. That is project-based learning. There are so many other topics you can do. It doesn't just have to be solving mathematics on the board, okay? And then you can use technology to drive this. And I've given you an example of my own project with profit and loss, going to do shopping, okay? And they use something as simple as a camera to record their conversations, to record themselves going on doing the project, and then they just wrote it down and brought it to class. And then they, you know, used a social media platform to share their ideas. There's Flipgrid. There are so many tools you can use. All right. There's Edverse. The children can even post their videos on Edverse, and then you see that the teacher. Okay, so project-based learning is something very interesting, and I'm very passionate about project-based learning because it helps students to gain mastery more than. I've tried it, and out of all the teaching tools I've tried, project-based learning is the best tool for a child to gain mastery. There's a song that I usually sing with my children then in class. It goes, when I know and I can do, and it makes some sense to me, then it means I'm learning something. Oh, I'm glad I'm learning something. When I know that I can do and it makes some sense to me, then it means I'm learning something. Oh, I'm glad I'm learning something. When you know and you can do, then it means you're learning something. If you teach a child to just know, they will forget. But if you teach a child to do, they will always remember. So that is exactly what project-based learning is all about. Okay? So I just want to end with this. Teachers play a vital role in technology adoption. Even if your school buys the most expensive tech tool, if the teachers do not adopt it, if your teachers do not train themselves to adopt this technology, then it is a waste of money and time. And that is why we will keep training teachers on the use of technology. And that is why EdVest will keep investing to ensure that teachers get a grasp of how technology can make their teaching and learning fun, exciting, and lucrative at the end of the day. And that is why I'll tell you teachers to take technology by the bull horn. Okay? See technology as a bull and take it by the horn, because it's for your own good, it's for your own professional development, and it's for your own growth. Because when you grow in the use of technology, the sky is just your starting point. It's not your limit, it's your starting point, because there's a lot to do. There are lots of opportunities in education, in the educational sector. Lots of opportunities in the educational sector that if you channel and champion it, then you'll be able to do a lot of things. My name, once again, is Nena Okore, and I hope you benefited from everything I've said here today. Please, if you have questions, feel free to ask questions and I'll be responding to you. Thank you very much and bye.